Hello, welcome to step 10 as promised. So let's just dive into some of this real quick, the easy stuff, and then we'll go through some of the harder stuff later on. First and foremost, I have the side skirt, which they don't identify on this particular step. Anyways, it gets part E31. Put right in here. So I will do that. And just in case you guys are wondering, yeah, step 10, like the other ones, does represent some interesting challenges. It's not what you expect per se, depending on what you're going to build using this vehicle, but at least it made it a bit of a challenge for me. So there, that part's on there. I'm going to set that aside over here. Same thing with the other side skirt. You put E29 on there up in the front. Nice thing about it is that you do not have to have this mounted onto the vehicle to do the work. Like that. Now what I will be doing, not in this step but later on, is when I put this up against the side of the vehicle, when I have the upper and lower hulls put together, I will look to see what is, well, might as well do it right now while I'm doing it. So I'm putting it into the slots where it's going to be attached permanently, which was a little bit harder than I thought. Like so. Now, most of the ejection pin markings are not going to show up, but I have 4 of them that are. So what I'm going to do is putty those in. Look down the side there, so that I know that those need to be done. I'm going to do the same thing with the other side. And this is just to give a nice look to the finished vehicle. This one's going to actually have more showing, so it needs a little bit more work. This is the, like I was talking about in the previous video, you know, the what sets this, what's going to set this apart from other models that are in a contest, let's say, or you know, you just want to give a kit that little bit of extra pop. Well, what is that? Well, you know, taking care of these kind of small details like this are the things that stand out. Now, at this point in time, it's saying that I could add part F15 right onto the hull side, 1 or 2 of them, or sorry, onto the side skirt side, just right in this area. I'm holding off on the F15s. There's 1 or potentially 2 on the driver's side, 1 potentially 2 on the other side. These are kind of, I'd say, mix and match. Units might do something different depending on what you see out there. Some didn't use them at all. Like I said, I'm going to leave them off for right now. However, as I've done in the past, I'm going to mark these so that I know that I didn't use them. One of the things that I'm being cognizant of, and yeah, that I can't do super duper well, is the working platform that's on the M2A2 and was carried over onto the M2A2 ODS, but is not present on the M2A3 and afterwards. They used to put some of the weighting gear poles underneath. This goes on, the way this kit is designed, you can see there these 2 notches on here, and that's where this kit sits, or the bench sits on top of that and goes in, so that there's this solid case right here. I'm not attaching the side skirts at this point, and so I'm not attaching this, but as you may have remembered, I had the hinge on here. I very carefully pulled that off because this needs to go on first so that that can be glued on top of it. But if I glue this on right now, it may or may not be the right height when I need to put this on later. Why not just do this? Well, at this point in time, I'm not ready to do the armored side skirts, even though if you guys build the Orochi kit, they come with the Academy kits, they come with these side skirts basically already molded with the upper hull. I want to be able to get in and do some of the detailing here first. That's why I'm not doing it. So for now, I'm leaving that off. I just want that known. I will be, however, putting the shovel on top as shown in the instructions. So just like so, because that was for vehicles that do have the equipment on them in the field. That's something that was or is present in the photos. And right now I'm starting to go deeper and deeper into the photos of vehicles in the field to try and get a feel for what I want to leave, what I want to add. And that's been leading to some problems, or decisions might be the better way to put it. What do I want to put on? What do I want to keep off? While I'm working my way around, I'm going to come around to the front. Here we have part F26. This is a M2A2 piece that's added on. All you want to do is make sure that the distance on the left-hand side and the right-hand side from that upper piece are the same. We're getting into some areas too where people have pointed out that, you know, the bolts that are on maybe in different patterns or not match up on the Tamiya kit. Some of these bolts here are panels and plates, and all I would say is, again, because it's an M2A2 ODS, things got shifted around a little bit. You want to look at the photos of something you want to build, a specific vehicle, if you want to make it 100% correct in your mind, in how it's going on, because otherwise what might be right for you might not be correct for somebody else. Put on the lifting lugs. And again, all the parts have already been taken off the sprues and cleaned up for seams and things of that nature. So that's the only prep that I've done that I think that is a little too much for sitting around. Even if we were sitting around drinking coffee and I'd be cleaning stuff up, cleaning up is probably the most boring part while you sit and talk. And much as we may love hearing my voice, even me, that's a bit much even for me. So here's the spare track that would go on the front. For now, I'm leaving that off as well. Working my way around. So I have not put any of those lifting or the weighting poles on. I did put some putty in there, and I'm going to take and shave that down a bit before I just hit it with the sanding stick, just to do the large or gross refinement, and then work my way down to more fine. I mean, you gotta admit, watching me sand putty is probably thrilling enough as it is. So while I'm doing this, I'll start talking about my dilemma. And my dilemma has to do with periscopes on this thing. So, looking through all my prototype photos of these vehicles in the field. Now, I admit I can't tell if they are in the field in training or in the field in combat. And I'm stating that up front so that people don't think that everything you see that isn't a museum piece is instantly in combat and correct. It could also be in the field for training or evaluation or something along those lines. But the photos that I have don't appear to be, at least experiments or evaluation. They look to be at least a deployed with troops in, if not combat, in training. So like before, just sanding it down. Now, in particular, there are 4 periscopes that I'm dealing with. One is the periscope that's molded in right here, and the other 3 are the ones that go on the back. At some point in time, this periscope right here behind the turret was removed and placed underneath the turret ring somewhere up in here. But for whatever reason, it's not clear to me exactly how it works, because it seems like it's a periscope. When it was put in, it faces the rear towards the hatch, because there's a bar that goes towards the front, and I've seen that on several vehicles. So that confuses me. There's that. And then, so at this point in time, because it would also be such a pain to deal with, and I really would like to get this vehicle done, I'm just gonna play stupid and leave this particular periscope in place. I don't want to deal with it. If I was going to deal with it, if I'm really going to get that upset about it, I've decided that I would start with the M2A3 kit from Orochi or MENG and go from there. I'm done as far as trying to fix that. The next thing is with these 3 periscopes back here, and I'm going to show you this. This is the hatch from earlier. With this hatch in place, like this, I have seen photos where none of these periscopes are here with this hatch, this style of hatch. I have seen photos with the newer style hatch, the one that you would find in the M2A3 kit. It's got like a Kirby armored plate, and it's got 4 periscopes on this particular hatch. I've seen that. I've also seen photos of all 3 periscopes here like this, and I've seen photos of just these 2 periscopes, and this one is not in place. What do you do? Now, aside from me giving you the same advice that I've given you before, which is find pictures of the prototype and model that particular one, if you're just going to do a M2A2 ODS vehicle, this goes into that realm where I was telling you that when they came due for service as M2A2s and brought up to some ODS standard, I think it depended on what the maintenance crew / maintenance facility decided to do with the vehicle at that time. And I don't know anything else about the vehicles that I have the photos of. I just have those 4 variations. Now, I'm working with this particular style of hatch right here. And I have seen them, by the way, where one photo where they have these 2 periscopes missing this periscope and the plain hatch without any of the up armoring at all. Go figure. So anyways, put that aside. My thoughts on this are, do what either the prototype photo shows or what you want to do. These periscopes that are given by Tamiya that go back here are okay, but they are missing the outside safety or protective casing, whatever. It's just a bar up, over, and down. I mean, it'd be easy enough to scratch build, let alone make something to 3D print it and set it up. So you can just glue them right in and call it good. Since they're there, you can not put them in and fill the holes. At this point in time, from what I've seen, I don't really want to fill holes anymore. I admit that. So I think I'll put all 3 of them in with the hatch, this particular hatch right here, and call it good. But I just wanted you to be aware that there are variations of how this is set up and done, so that if you see photos of a vehicle that doesn't have any periscopes back there, and actually I've seen more pictures of them without periscopes than I thought I would, and I was surprised to see, and I can identify that this is, I mean, there's no hole there, there's nothing plated over or welded on. It was either very well done where they filled in that hole and ground it down and repainted it, or it was manufactured without that particular periscope right here. And I did not look up to see if that would happen to be an M3, the cavalry version, where they get rid of a periscope. That's always a possibility too. But for the prototype photos that I was looking for what I'm doing, that was the conundrum I ran across. It was unexpected, to say the least, but that's also why I stress looking at the photos of what you want to build. And I'm doing this without the what do they do? Yeah, these are right. So I'm having a problem because I clipped off all 3 of the periscopes, but unlike the other 2, this one has, even though it's all in A42, this one has a smaller square, and it seems to be a little wider. It doesn't want to slot in there. I'm surprised by that too. So okay, now you get to see what happens when you're surprised by stuff. What I'm gonna do is just trim back on this nub enough to slide it in there. This is kind of an on-the-spot build fix, and I'm sure for many of you this is no big deal and you're like, oh yeah, Jacques, you know, I already know that. But that's what I do just to make it fit, and I'll have to keep test fitting it to make sure it does fit. Normally that doesn't happen, so like I said, I'm surprised. I'm going to dry it up a little bit so I get some more glue in there to... And I'm sorry some of this isn't in focus. I'm holding it a little closer to me. So there. And then make sure when you put these on that you're covering up the location hole and everything's good, so that you don't have to go back later on and fill something or have it look dumb. Nothing worse than having that, you know, tiny hair thick seam right in front where you can't get it later on. So I have decided to put those 3 on. Already got those lifting lugs on. I've sanded down in this area for the different parts. And that came from step 9. What I'm also going to do at this point is pull out my fire extinguisher piece that I had before, that I talked about in the previous step 9 video. Pull out my little piece of wax paper, get my black glue, because I really like this to go on with the minimal amount of glue if possible. Get my forceps, Here's my piece. So I've got, okay, check for any fibers or hairs or anything before you glue it on. So with this, I've got positive point over here in the back, here underneath the handle, and here on the side. Now they're supposed to be attached here and here, and it seems that it is. And there might be a little, yep, there's a nub that I missed for cleaning this up. I want this to sit all nice and level, so I'll clean that up. So all I'm going to do is try and get the area that needs it right there with the glue, and then place this as best as I can right in that area. So you just kind of dropped it in. I've got a little bit of time here to fudge it around, and I think that looks pretty dang good for where it is, covering those original location holes. I'm going to call it good. Now I might sit there and look at more photos and try and get this more exact, but honestly I just want to work forward with this. So that's a step part from step 9 finished, but it's finished. So the other thing is these two that I filled in right here, these two holes, actually are for the this piece of kit that's going to go on there, and there are the 2 location holes. So it should go there. All I have to do is slip those off and just glue it on without the positive location holes. Don't have to worry about that if you don't want to. And meaning, don't fill in the holes and sand them out. You can just glue the details on. So I'm just nipping off those location pins as such. Now once you start gluing all these pieces on, you got to be careful where you put your fingers as you're moving stuff around, or you're going to have problems of things being kind of wonky and whatever. So that's about right. What I know is that it's got to be centered so that those tie down straps are in the right spot. Same time, I'm gonna glue on another lifting lug, which goes right there. Now coming back around to the rear hatch, so there are 3 pieces here. There's this lug on this side, A23. There's the center, call it the hinge catch or however, and A24. At this point, I'm not worried about the accuracy of it. I mean, if I really was, I would go in and make this and make it a little more accurate and get these hinges so where I could make a piece and just plop it on. I'm not going to do that right now. Maybe next time. I have to admit, building Bradleys is kind of fun for me, so maybe next time I'll do it. And then I can make that available to the rest of the world. But what I'm going to do now is put the glue in for those, and this goes in with the L piece facing out. It's hard to explain how that is with the now with the detail, with the end of the rod, with the what's probably in there is a little bearing or something like that. But anyways, the bearing housing on the outside like that. I'm going to take the centerpiece and put it in so that it's ready to go. Now the hard part, so I can put that in, slide that in here, and then slide that in there and get that all in. Now, before I put the other piece on, and the hard part is that we already have the piece that was glued on in step 9, and getting that all in there like that. See, there, I got it secured down. That center piece is in, the hinge piece is in. Now, I'm ignoring this, but there's this big gap right here in the back. Right, you know, there's a gap in a large piece that stands up on the base of this, and there will be one with that as well. That's why I would, in the future, if I built this again, I would probably fill in for all the periscopes, fill in for all those hinges, design and 3D print a new hatch with the hinges and all that detail already in place and accurate, and then I just glue it to the surface. So then there's nothing to worry about as far as those gaps, those elevations, those kind of inaccuracies, but there's already some issues with this as well, and I don't want to do it. Is the answer. I'm also putting glue now in the joints where they attach, so that it'll have a strong bond there. And then I'm going to attach this piece as well. Give it a little bit of room because that'll help to eliminate the seam a bit in that area. It's just kind of ugly because it's made to be functional. And my understanding, without having looked at it right now, but from looking at other builds of the Orochi and the MENG kit, is that they have a much better detail setup, much more accurate, much nicer looking final setup on that. So I'm just adding the glue to the seam to glue down that back hatch. So now we're going to have all this basically as one big solid piece right there. So looking through all this, you also notice that this part B38 is not added. That's because it's included on here now, which has been here. This will again be getting glued back on. It did glue on really well. I just need to put it on top of this right here. So with that in place, see, it'll all be fine. I just needed to do that. So, and this popped off fairly nicely, but look at how the glue is definitely softened the plastic up and pulled it up and around. So moving on with that, we're pretty much done with this top part up here. And so we want to go down to this bottom part. This is where we're going to be attaching the other equipment. So we've got the tanker bar along this right here with the spade part, or the I don't know what to call it, the pry bar part, facing towards the rear. And to be honest, I loved working with tanker bars when I was in the military trying to do work. They are a very handy tool for their size and for what they need, for what they do. I've always been impressed with a tanker bar and what you can get away with. Well, that and, physics. Give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum strong enough, and I can lift the world, I believe was said. But that gives you your axe. Next goes on the sledgehammer. And again, these are all pre-cleaned, so they just slide in. And lastly, the axe handle. Now there is one thing that needs to be said about all this that I have not addressed, and that is, okay, this is the axe handle and the axe head's on the side. We put that in step 9. The hole, yeah, that's better. There's no hole in the bottom of the axe head or here for when you put the handle in. And I didn't drill that out or clean that out beforehand. So I may try in another video, try and drill that out so that that's available and looks good. The other part is you can try and represent that with paint. I don't find that as convincing, but it is an option. All right. Next, we have a couple pieces of armor. Bring this around. So right there, we put on that piece, and I know it's numbered. There it is, Echo 19. Goes on very simply. And then right here is Echo 20, and that also gets a handle, but I'm going to put the handle on after I put the piece on. And the hinges, or what, if you want to call them that, I'm going to call them hinges, go right onto the cap looking piece. I'm not exactly sure if that is a fuel cap or what this all has. I'm going to assume that it's a fuel cap, but it doesn't matter. This goes on, put a little glue there, get my forceps, put the handle in. Looks good. All right, next we have Alpha 50 right here. The important part is that one, there's just a faint outline of where it goes right in here, and when you look at the part, there's a little line, little bump on one end that goes towards the turret. So put the glue on, put the part on. I'm going to put on the extra armor right there. Now I'm a little more lavish with the glue when I'm doing these larger pieces, just so that I have enough remaining when I put this on, so that it's gonna actually glue down. So that looks good. Coming from the back, from the side, from the bottom. And then just check and see. What I'm looking at is how the armor fits up on this edge, so it looks reasonable. It looks like it's lined up. That looks good. And with this is the tie down right here, or the, sorry, not the tie down. This is the one of the lifting lugs. And this does have two holes here that I need to fill in from the, again, weighting poles that I'm not going to use. Now, another point that I want to bring up right now is these are the back boxes. There are 2 identification panel pieces that go there. I am not going to add them at this point, because not all vehicles carry them. However, I wanted to point out that that is something that needs to be done at this step in the process. Now break out my putty again. And in the process of breaking out my putty, I'm also looking, yep. So some vehicles have those rear ID panels, some don't. I've got a lot of pictures with them on, so I'd say they're pretty standard. But for the M2A2 ODS, I also have at least 2 pictures where they do not. They're not on. So again, one of those things, just pay attention to it. Sorry, I can't give you a definitive answer. No, that's what everybody wants. They want, this is how it's got to be. Never deviated. Well, unfortunately, that's not how the world works, I guess. If it were that easy, everybody'd be doing this, right? So, now I do have one fun thing to talk about. I know if you guys are paying attention to this and you're looking at the instructions, you're sitting there going, well, hey, what about the exhaust? What's going on with that? So I had taken a look at the exhaust. Here's what Tamiya offers. It's the piece right here, which represents the exhaust housing. And then there's this brace that goes on the side. I'm not gluing this all together. And then finally on front, there's this large piece that goes off to the side as well. And somewhere that piece went flying. Good luck finding it. Oh, there it is. So anyways, it's these 3 parts here. What I didn't like is a lot of the photos that I saw showed the actual exhaust housing coming out. It showed some variation in the bolts and how things are done and weld lines and so forth. So I 3D printed, designed and 3D printed a new one. This will give you roughly an idea of what you don't get in the Tamiya kit that I'm adding in here, which is the big exhaust shroud. And it does stop here. It doesn't have this full length for most of them. And then just to give you an idea of the part, you know, Tamiya got the part as far as the major housing piece pretty accurate. I mean, it's darn close. So you could leave off that front piece and just attach these. And then I guess if you really wanted, yeah, I'm fumbling around, sorry. All right, a little bit of glue will help here. I'm not as strongly fingered as I once was. Or I'm just trying to do too much. So anyway, if you want to, you could just glue this together like this. Put in something in there, some stretch sprue, some plastic construction, and generally you're going to have something that's in the ballpark. I just wanted something better, so this is something better. What something better requires, though, for me, is to take these attachment points and square them down. Everything needs to be flush with this for attaching this from the photos I've seen. So I'm happy with how it came out. Took a little bit of work, but I think it's pretty cool. I'm just going to sit and sand the edges down, and that does mean that it might hit that, so you gotta kind of finesse it a little bit. So this is one of the parts where that was actually pretty easy to find in the prototypes, to see that, hey, you know, the exhaust within it is necessary, but the Tamiya kit is at least rudimentarily pretty accurate. Now, the Orochi and MENG kits are a little bit better in this regard, but they do have some limits to what, compared to what I made with the 3D printing. So all I did was basically make these flush. So I can take and add this, and to make it accurate, that's got to go there, and that's got to go like that. So this bolt on the end of that goes on the corner, and the exhaust is just a hair to the right of the edge of this plate up behind it. Now, I also designed this so that I had all the, or as much surface area on the bottom as I possibly could. I have not, however, cleaned this up. So just sand this down so you can see what's in here. Now, not everything is flush. For example, this comes up, but this is not flush with this bottom bar. This is supposed to be a little bit higher, just a smidge than this, at least as far as the prototype. So this is more like a foot. This piece right here is more like a foot that it's on. There's a little bit of you know, this being framing, and then there's this foot in the back. Now that's all nice and smooth. Check on everything, and then I'm going to take my glue and hopefully, you know, this just worked. Nope, it doesn't want to work this time. So got to clear the end out. And again, I'm leaving this in rather than taking it out of the video because I want you to, again, see, as I've said before in other videos when I'm doing this, this is real people stuff. These are the kinds of fixes that I use to make things work. Just because people are good modelers, get a lot of awards, doesn't mean they don't have to put up with, and that's not me, by the way. I'm just saying, you know, you deal with the larger names in the hobby, whatever. They all still have to deal with these issues like we do. They just do it better. So I've got that generally in place, but you can see I've got it not squared up, so I got to square that up. Right there. Make sure everything looks good. Level. Plumb. And I think that looks pretty doggone good. If I do say so myself, I'm rather happy with that. The only thing I don't like, and I don't know if it's because of the resin or if the kit itself has a little bit of a, you can see there's a little bit of wobble there. If I set that back part of the exhaust on there, I'm way off base on this. But if I put that down like it should be, yeah, that doesn't look right. I must have messed something up somewhere. So I'm gonna take that off real quick. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say that having that back piece here is more important. Level than that front part, because I can always add material underneath there. And it also may have to do with the fact that I've got to swing this forward. See what I mean? There's multiple problems, variations on a theme, issues that can get pinged in there. What's going on? Don't know. Oh no. Major issue. Need to freak out? No, none of that. So for right now, that looks good. But you'll notice it's square but too far back. It seems to have something to do with these mounting squares that are on the Tamiya kit, that this isn't sitting quite right. It doesn't look quite right. Because there I've put it back enough to where it's in good shape again. So if you mess around with this or make your own or do something like that, it might take a little bit of work. I mean, you're modifying something that was this to that. Yeah. So I'll address that later, but I think it looks better myself. So now I've got those parts off to the side. We've put everything on that needs to be on. Now at this point in time, you want to look over everything that's gone on, just to double check and make sure that while you're fitting another piece, something else hasn't either come loose or gotten wonky. Handles are a big one for that, where you'll accidentally hit one. Look at it later on and you're like, oh man, that looks horrible. But it looks like everything is on nice and square. So that right there is step 10 complete. And I'll sand off those parts, or the filling of the hole, in step 11, and we will continue with the build and get to a point where we might start adding major assemblies. So until then, keep modeling, and I'll see you later.